Hey, everyone. Welcome to Storytelling Time, the place where every story comes alive. If you love getting lost in thrilling tales, gripping mysteries, and epic adventures, you're in the right spot. I'm your storyteller, and here, we don't just tell stories, we bring them to life. Whether it's fantasy, mystery, horror, or even a bit of comedy, we're all about immersion. So grab a snack, get comfy, and prepare for a journey that'll keep you on the edge of your seat. Trust me, you won't want to miss a single chapter. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join the Storytelling Time family. Let's dive into the stories that await, starting now. The Man with the Bowler Hat. The ballroom had emptied, save for the last few stragglers. The echoes of laughter and clinking glasses had faded into the cold night air. But still, the air felt charged. The very walls of the grand hall seemed to pulse with a mystery that had not been solved. The clock had chimed 5, its echo hanging heavy, a reminder that time was running out, but for what? Ms. Vanderrock sat in a velvet chair, the remnants of her wine swirling at the bottom of her glass. She didn't move as the staff cleared the room. Her thoughts were miles away, still circling that man, that nameless enigma who had waltzed in and out of her life like a fleeting shadow. How had he managed to slip away without a trace? How had he disappeared from the dance floor, leaving only a trail of questions behind? And the girl in the red dress? She had left with such an unsettling sense of finality, as though the night had been her own private performance, and the audience was never meant to understand. Ms. Vanderrock's fingers ran absent-mindedly over her wrist, where her precious bangles had once been. Gone. Vanished. She hadn't even noticed their absence until after the clock struck midnight. Her mind raced, she was always so aware, always so in control. But tonight? Tonight, she had been caught off guard. And it left her feeling exposed. The bartender, still polishing glasses, caught her eye. He noticed the way she gripped her wrist, the tension in her jaw. He'd been watching her closely all night, and now, with the party over, he found himself wondering if he had missed something. He had noticed the man. Everyone had noticed him, in their own way. But the bartender's observations had been different. There was something else about the man, something more than his bowler hat or his unremarkable suit. He had an air of familiarity, but the bartender couldn't place it. He had been too focused on the guests and the drinks to give the man too much thought. But now, in the silence of the nearly empty ballroom, he felt the weight of his curiosity. Something about the way the man had carried himself, too smooth, too calculated, haunted him. As the staff wrapped up their duties, the bartender ventured toward the center of the room, where the pendulum clock still ticked relentlessly. It was a strange piece of decor, its heavy, rhythmic sound a constant in the otherwise quiet space. He approached it with a sense of unease, his eyes scanning the polished marble floor beneath it. Was something missing? The hat. The man's bowler hat, which had been left on the pendulum's corner, was gone. His heart skipped. Could he have just imagined it? He glanced around the room, but it was empty now, devoid of the shadows and secrets that had filled it just hours ago. His eyes fell on the space where the hat had been resting. Nothing. Not a trace of dust or disturbance. Just the cold, silent pendulum. A chill crept down his spine. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed behind him. He turned swiftly, his hand instinctively going to his apron pocket where a small knife was tucked for safety. It was a habit, more than anything, developed after years of working in places like this, crowded events, strangers, and too many things that didn't sit quite right. But the footsteps were too soft. No one had come in. It was her. The girl in the red dress. She had returned. Her gown shimmered under the faint light from the chandelier, pooling around her like the blood that had once stained her shoes. She walked slowly, deliberately, her bare feet silent on the marble floor. She was alone. Her eyes were locked on the bartender, and for a moment, it felt as though the entire room had vanished, leaving just the two of them in this suspended moment. The bartender cleared his throat. "Back so soon?" His voice sounded too loud in the stillness. The girl didn't answer, but as she passed him, the faintest sound, like the jingling of small, delicate bells, filled the air. Her fingers brushed the side of the bar, lingering just for a second, as though tracing the same invisible line the man had left behind. The bartender's mind raced. Bells? The girl's movement was fluid, effortless, like a phantom. She paused by the grand doors, glancing over her shoulder with that same distant expression she had worn before, as if measuring the space between her and the life she had just left behind. Before the bartender could say anything else, she stepped into the night. The door shut softly behind her, leaving the room as silent as it had been before. The bartender stood frozen, staring at the space where she had been. The sound of her bells, the soft, unnerving sound, lingered in his ears. Time ticked on. But something about the night still felt off. The man. The girl. The inexplicable disappearances. The jewelry that vanished into thin air. The fact that no one seemed to remember how any of them had truly arrived at the party. It was all a blur of fragmented memories. But he knew one thing, there was a thread running through this night, thin, invisible, but stretching across everything that had happened. A thread he hadn't yet unraveled. He moved back to the bar, his eyes scanning the counter. Maybe something had been left behind. A clue. An indication of where the strange man and his companion had gone. He ran his fingers across the smooth wood of the bar, and that's when he saw it, a small, gold earring. Not the girl's hoop, this one was a different design altogether. It shimmered in the dim light, catching his attention. It didn't belong to any of the guests he'd seen that night. As he picked it up, the door creaked open once more, but this time, it wasn't the girl in red. It was a man, his face covered by a hood. He stepped into the room without a word, his presence heavy, almost oppressive. The bartender froze, his heart pounding. There was something familiar about him. "Did you see them?" The voice was muffled under the hood, but the tone was unmistakable. It was the same man from earlier, the one who had vanished without a trace. The bartender didn't answer. He just stared at the figure, the eerie silence between them growing thick. The man stepped closer to the bar, and the air seemed to thicken with 1,000 unspoken questions. "You know the truth of this night," the man said softly, leaning in closer, his voice barely a whisper. The bartender reached out to place the earring on the counter, but as his fingers brushed it, the world seemed to blur for a moment, his vision darkening, his mind fogging. The last thing he remembered was the echo of that same peculiar, otherworldly laugh that had come from the man with the bowler hat earlier. And then, nothing. The next morning, the ballroom was silent, save for the ticking of the clock. No one remembered the mysterious guests who had arrived without invitation. No one had seen the bartender since the night before. But the hat? The gold earring? They were still there, resting on the marble counter, untouched. And as for the girl in the red dress, well, no one remembered her either. But if you listened closely, you might have heard a faint jingle in the distance. A soft, haunting echo of something that didn't quite belong.